Hello again, Greg here, and welcome to the second episode in the Learn Latin series. In this episode, I'm going to be focusing on the Latin alphabet and how to pronounce it like authentic Romans. I should warn you before watching this that I am focusing purely on classical Latin pronunciation. There's multiple different ways of pronouncing it. You get ecclesiastical pronunciation in the church and the pronunciation of medieval Latin, and if you want to know either of those, then this probably isn't the best place for you. Likewise, if you're only interested in reading or writing the language, you're welcome to skip this episode, but I would urge you not to, because Latin is really a beautiful language when it's spoken properly. So, let's begin with the Latin alphabet. And the good news is it's actually easier than the English alphabet. You already use all the same letters, except some of them are missing. There are 23 letters in the Latin alphabet, and you'll recognize them all here. The only ones missing are J, U, and W, which were introduced much later in the medieval period. There's a couple important ones to point out, the first being K and Y. These were introduced quite late on in classical Rome from the Greek, and there are very, very few Latin words as a consequence which contain them. You'll only find them in imported Greek words such as calendar. The second one is this letter here, V. When Romans wrote it capitalized, they wrote it with a point at the bottom, like our English V. But when they wrote it in small, they wrote it with a curve at the bottom, like our lowercase English U. It's important to realize that this is the same letter, and it can be used as a vowel or a consonant, and it doesn't matter how it's written, unless it's capitalized or not. So, let's begin with our Latin pronunciation, and what you will hear very, very often is people saying to you, oh, but Latin is a dead language, no one knows how it was pronounced. And if you ever hear someone say that, do me a favor and slap them across the face, because it's not true. First of all, Latin is not a dead language. It's still spoken, sung, written, read in all corners of the world. You can see Latin choirs singing in cathedrals. I have translations of The Hobbit and Harry Potter in Latin. You can buy Latin Scrabble boards. There's even meetings and camps you can go to where Latin is the lingua franca, and indeed it's the language of the Vatican. So it's not a dead language. It may be dying, but all I think it needs is some shock and enthusiasm to spark it back to life. Secondly, it's not true that we don't know how it's pronounced. There are a wealth of scrolls looking at how to pronounce the Latin language written by Romans. And in addition, we also can rely a lot on anecdotal evidence from misspellings of words. So let me give you this example. Pretend that you're living thousands of years in the future, where English is now a dead language, no one speaks it anymore, and you come across this word, through, and you have no idea how to pronounce it. No one speaks the language anymore. You've never heard anyone say it. You know that there's other words in the English language that have this OUGH in them, like cough, bought, rough, though, bow, hiccup, but they all have it pronounced differently, so you're not sure how to pronounce it yourself. But then you come across someone who's misspelled the word, like this, and you know that a double O in English is always pronounced oo, and therefore you can conclude with some confidence that the word is pronounced through. There's a wealth of Latin literature in the form of graffiti, letters, plays, both educated literature and the writings of plebeians, and people have gone through them looking for these common misspellings and used them to, with some degree of confidence, conclude how certain words should be pronounced. Okay, so let's start the actual tutorial of how to pronounce, and we'll start with the vowels. It's important to realize that in Latin, vowels may be either short or long, and this changes how they're pronounced. The Romans wrote vowels in different ways depending on whether they were short or long. Sometimes they wrote long vowels larger than small ones. Sometimes they wrote the vowel twice to show that it was long. And in most decent modern Latin textbooks, you'll find a short horizontal line over the vowel to let you know that it's long. And that's what I'm going to use in the rest of my lectures. So let's start with the letter A. When the letter A is short, it's pronounced A, like the A in Pat. When it is long, with this line over it, then it's pronounced longer. Same sound, like in the English word father. So short A is A, long A is A. The letter E, when it is short, is pronounced E, like the English word pet. When it is long, it has more of an A sound, like in the English word they. So short E is E, long E is A. When the letter I is short, it's pronounced I, like in the English word pit. When it is long, it's pronounced E, like in the English word machine. So short I, long I, E. When the letter O is short, it is pronounced O, as in the English word pot. When it is long, it's pronounced O, as in the English word note. So short O, O, long O, O. The letter U, when it is short, is pronounced U, as in the English word put. When it is long, has the same sound but sounds longer, as in the English word rude. So we'll just run through them one more time. Short A, long A, short E, long E, A. Short I, long I, E. Short O, long O, O. Short U, long U, And that's it for the vowels on their own. Certain vowels can be combined when they follow another vowel, and these are pronounced slightly differently, and they are known as diphthongs, and there's only a handful of them to remember. When you see an A followed by an E, it is pronounced I, like the English word I'll. When you see an A followed by a U, it is pronounced ow, like the English word owl. When you see an E followed by an I, it's pronounced A, like in the English word feign. When you see an E followed by a U, you pronounce them both very quickly together, like ew. It's very rare in Latin, and there are no English words I can think of that include this. It's pronounced ew. When you see an O followed by an E, you pronounce it oi, like in oil. And when you see a U followed by an I, it's pronounced uy. And again, I couldn't find any English words, but there's the Spanish phrase muy bueno, and this muy, uy, is a very similar sound. So A-E-I, A-U, ow, E-I, A, E-U, ew, O-E, oi, U-I, uy. And that brings us on to consonants. So on the whole, Latin consonants are pronounced very similar to English consonants, but we'll just run through them. So, the letter B is pronounced hard, like the B in bounce, b, except when it's followed by an S or a T, and then it sounds more like a P, ps and pt, like upset, uptight. The letter C is always pronounced hard, as in the English word can, k. It's never pronounced soft, like in city, always pronounced k. The letter D is pronounced like the D in dog, d. The letter F is pronounced f, as in fate. The letter G is also always pronounced hard, as in the English word go, g. It's never pronounced soft, like it is in age or orange. And when it follows an N, it makes interesting noise, which sounds like the NGN combination in hangnail. So the word to the right of that, manus, is a Latin word meaning great, and it's commonly mispronounced Magnus, but it's actually pronounced manus. The letter H is spoken slightly softer than it is in English. It's just very lightly breathed, kind of like it is in hot. It's just pronounced h. I have already talked about as a vowel. It can also be used as a consonant, and when it is used as a consonant, it has the Y sound as in yoga. Later on in the medieval period, consonant I's were replaced with J's. The letter K, I've already talked about, is very rare, but it's pronounced like the C in calendar. L is pronounced same as English, love, L. M is pronounced same as English, as in money, m. N is pronounced same as English, as in no, n. And P is hard as in pot, p, except when it is followed by an H, and it is not, as most people think, contracted to make an F sound, as in philosophy, but it actually sounds like a P followed by an H, as in uphill. So the word philosophy in Latin is philosophia. So it just sounds like a normal P with a slight breath at the end of it to denote the H. The letter Q, as in English, is always followed by a U and has a qu sound, as in quick. R is an interesting letter. The Romans referred to it as the littera canina, meaning the dog's letter, because it sounded like a dog snarling. So remember to roll your letter R. It's easier in some dialects than other. As a native Scot, it's quite easy for me to roll my R's, but some people have difficulty with this. The S is always pronounced softly, as in the S in soft. It's never pronounced like a Z in some English words, such as ease, as a very harsh Z sound, but in Latin it's always pronounced S. T is pronounced same as English, as in tip, t. And when it is followed by an H, it doesn't contract to a th sound, but you pronounce each letter individually, like the PH combination. So it sounds similar to hot-headed, t. The V in Latin is not pronounced like our English V, but is actually pronounced like our English W, as in wine. And it's important to remember this because lots of Latin words contain the letter V and are commonly mispronounced. And the letter X always has a KS sound, as in axe. It never has a GS sound, as in exactly or exact. It's always x, axe. And that's it for the Latin consonants. It's important to remember that double letters are pronounced twice. So, for instance, the English word letters, if you were speaking it in Latin, would be pronounced letters. You have to make sure the consonants are pronounced twice if they're written twice, similar to Italian. So here are some examples of Latin found in pictures off Google. And I'm going to leave a little pause before each one so you can try and pronounce it yourself, and then I'll give you the answer. So the first one is a Roman coin. The phrase on the right is very famous, and it was on Julius Caesar's banners, and it means I came, I saw, I conquered. And on the right you see Caesar himself. So take a while to think about how you would pronounce the words both on the left and right hand side, and then I'll give you the answer. Okay, so a lot of people would have said Caesar, but his name in classical pronunciation would actually be pronounced Kaiser, and the other word dictator. And the phrase on the right, you hear many people say veni vidi vici, which is also wrong. Spoken like a classical Roman, it should be veni vidi vici. So the next example is SPQR, which you'll find written on all sorts of things around Rome if you travel there today. And it translates roughly as the Senate and the people of Rome, and the phrase above is the same in Latin. So try and pronounce that. Pause the video now. Okay, so it should have sounded something like Senatus Populusque Romanus. And lastly is a phrase from a gravestone, which means roughly, remember you are mortal, remember to die, be mindful of the dead. So give that a shot. Give that a shot at pronunciation. And that should sound something like memento mori. Okay, so hopefully you got on okay with that. If not, don't be disheartened. You can always come back to this video and use it as a reference to help you with your pronunciation, and it will take a lot of time and practice until you get it perfect. One final thing I haven't talked about yet is where does the stress fall in Latin words? Unfortunately, there are two very simple rules to remember in order to get this right. The first is that accents never fall on the last syllable. So imagine the English word hotel, where the accent falls on the last syllable. That never happens in Latin, and provided it's not a one-syllable word. So we've got the word here numquam, which means never. And you see that it's numquam, the first syllable being accented. The second rule is in a word with 3 syllables or more, if the second last syllable is long, then it carries the accent, as in the word pecunia below, which translates as money. If the accent, if the second last syllable is short, then the accent falls on the syllable before, as in the word patria. So really, the accent can only ever fall on the second last or the third last syllable. And if you follow these 2 rules, then you should be able to get it right every time. So yeah, there's been a lot to take in this episode. Like I said, don't be daunted by it. Feel free to come back and refresh your memory whenever you like. There's lots of great books on pronunciation. One I'd recommend is Wheelock's Latin, which has quite a lot of pages at the beginning just focused on pronunciation. You can also watch lots of other videos on YouTube of people speaking the language and get an idea of how it's supposed to sound. Okay, so again, just thought I'd finish with some interesting phrases in etymology. The phrase for this lesson is errare humanum est, which means to err is human. The word is calculus. A lot of you might study calculus, and it's used in a lot of English words such as calculation, calculator, and it actually comes from the Latin word pebble, because in the days of ancient Rome, when calculations had to be performed, they used pebbles to help them count, like we count on our fingers, and that they sometimes attached pebbles to wood and made abacuses to help with more complex calculations. Okay, so that's all for this time. Next time I'll be talking about different conjugations in Latin verbs, looking at some early tenses, past, present, and future, and using the verb to love as an example. So hopefully see you again. Bye for now.